Pray sober. So Eli thought he was drunk. She was drunk. 1 Samuel chapter 1 verse 13. The Talmud says, from this we learn that a person should not say the Amida if he is drunk. In addition to these principles, the Talmud derives strategies of prayer from the story of Hannah. Hannah is compared to a beggar before a king, beseeching the king for a taste from the royal banquet. Hannah said to the Holy One, blessed be he, King of the universe, Lord over all the myriad hosts that you have created in your world. Is it so hard in your eyes to give me one son? To what can this be compared? To a king who made a banquet for his servants, a poor beggar came and stood by the door and said to them, please give me a morsel. No one paid any attention to him, so he pushed his way in and stood before the king, saying, your Majesty, out of all the food you have made for this great banquet, is it so hard in your eyes to give me one bite? Eli's blessings. Then Eli answered and said, go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant your petition that you have asked of him. 1 Samuel chapter 1 verse 17. Eli assumes that Hannah has drank too much at the sacrificial meal. Offended by the apparent sacrilege, he rebukes her with a rhetorical question typical of biblical Hebrew. How long will you make yourself drunk? Put away your wine from you. Chapter 1, verse 14. Hannah protests her innocence, explaining that she is not drunk, but rather she is crushed in spirit. Her prayers have not been inspired by libations. Instead, she has poured out her soul before the Lord, speaking to him out of her great concern and provocation. Chapter 1, verses 15 through 16. Instead of drinking, she is pouring out prayer. When she says, I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, she alludes to the Nazarite vow she has promised to undertake and to place upon her son. Numbers chapter 6 verse 3 says that the Nazarite must abstain from wine and strong drink. Numbers chapter 6 verse 3. Apparently embarrassed by his mistake, Eli hastily blesses the woman, saying, go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant your petition that you have asked of him. The Hebrew is even more optimistic. As the rabbis point out, it can be read to mean the God of Israel will grant your petition. Hannah seems to take Eli's blessing in the prophetic sense. She replies, let your maidservant find favor in your sight, confident that the Lord will answer her prayer because the high priest has said so. She leaves the sanctuary beaming with new faith and hope. Her face was no longer sad. Chapter 1, verse 18. And why all this abortion? When this lady couldn't have a baby, she wanted one so very much. And there's abortion. Did you know that in abortion, there are as many families wanting to adopt as those people that abort their children? They could give them up to the people that want the babies. The heart knows its own bitterness. Proverbs chapter 14 verse 10. This refers to Hannah, who was sorely pained, as it says in 1 Samuel chapter 1 verse 10. And she was in bitterness of soul. Only Hannah felt this bitterness, and when she was remembered, God remembered her alone, as it says in Proverbs chapter 14 verse 10. And a stranger does not share its joy. Exodus chapter 19 verse 1. The Lord remembered Hannah. Then they arose early in the morning and worshipped before the Lord, and returned again to their house in Ramah. And Elkanah had relations with Hannah his wife, and the Lord remembered her. 1 Samuel chapter 1 verse 19. The next day, after bidding the tabernacle farewell and worshiping before the Lord one last time before leaving, Elkanah and his family returned home. Then the Lord remembered her. According to the opinion of Rabbi Eleazar, she conceived on the first day of the 7th month, Tishri, on Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi Eleazar engages in some creative hermeneutics to prove that not only did Hannah conceive on Rosh Hashanah, but so did Sarah and Rachel. On Rosh Hashanah, Sarah, Rachel, and Hannah were visited. How can we prove this? Rabbi Eleazar said, we derive it from the two instances of the word visited. And the two instances of the word remembered. It is written concerning Rachel in Genesis chapter 30 verse 22. Then God remembered Rachel, and it is written concerning Hannah in 1 Samuel chapter 1 verse 19. And the Lord remembered her. In the Torah, there is a corresponding instance of the same word in connection with Rosh Hashanah. As it is written in Leviticus chapter 23, verse 24, a remembrance by blowing of trumpets. The two instances of the word visited follow. It is written concerning Hannah in 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 21. The Lord visited Hannah. And it also says regarding Sarah in Genesis 21, verse 1. Then the Lord visited Sarah. B. Rosh Hashanah 11a. Rabbi Eleazar's logic may seem far-fetched, but the synagogue lectionary considered it strong enough to establish the Torah reading and half-Torah for the first day of Rosh Hashanah. The Torah reading is Genesis chapter 21, the birth of Isaac, and the half-Torah tells the story of how the Lord remembered and visited Hannah. Hannah gave birth at the turn of the year. The biblical calendar has two turns of the year, the month of Nisan, the first month of the religious calendar, and the month of Tishri, the first month on the civil calendar. According to the opinion of Rabbi Eleazar, that year was a leap year with 13 months. Therefore, Hannah gave birth to Samuel at 7.5 months. Samuel. It came about in due time after Hannah had conceived that she gave birth to a son, and she named him Samuel, saying, because I have asked him of the Lord. 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 20. Hannah named her son Shemuel. Reddick explains Shemuel as a contraction of the words Shaul, requested, and Ma'el, from God, as Hannah says, because I have asked Shaul him of the Lord. Ke'el and deluge, on the other hand, argue for the more likely etymology, a combination of Shemuel and El, God, that is, heard of God. When the time for the annual pilgrimage arrived, Elkanah's family went up to Shiloh to make the sacrifice as usual. The time Elkanah had an additional sacrifice to make, he had to pay his vow. Chapter 1, verse 21. Apparently, Elkanah had also vowed a vow to the Lord. If the Almighty would only grant his beloved Hannah a son, he had promised to make an appropriate sacrifice. Hannah, however, did not go up to Shiloh. She told her husband that she would not go up again until she had weaned the boy and could leave him there in the service of the Lord forever, thereby fulfilling her vow. Elkanah offered no objection. He said, remain until you have weaned him. Only may the Lord confirm his word. Chapter 1, verse 23. Had not the Lord already confirmed his word? The cryptic remark implies that Elkanah had received some prophetic word about the child's destiny, fulfilling the vow. Now, when she had weaned him, she took him up with her, with a 3-year-old bull and 1 ephah of flour and a jug of wine, and brought him to the house of the Lord in Shiloh, although the child was young. 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 24. Biblical women weaned their children late, usually after 3 years. After he was weaned, Hannah and Elkanah brought him to Shiloh along with 3-year-old bull for a burnt offering and supplies for the accompanying wine, libations, and bread offerings. See there, guys, we were cheated out of 2 years. No, I'm kidding. Okay. They offered the burnt offering and then brought the little boy before the high priest. Ordinarily, a Levite only had to serve in the tabernacle intermittently and only between the ages of 25 and 50. Hannah and Elkanah presented their son before the Lord when he was 3 years old, the age of weaning, and left him there in the service of the sanctuary forever. Hannah explained to Eli that this was the child she had asked for from the Lord, and that she must now make good on the terms of her vow. So I have also asked him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he asked to the Lord. She loaned him to the Lord. Chapter 1, verse 28. Hannah's magnificent. Then Hannah prayed, 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 1. Discharging her beloved son into the care of Eli, the priest, Hannah turned to the Lord to pray to him in his holy sanctuary again. Hannah utters the prayer of 1 Samuel chapter 2, verses 1 through 10, in the form of a prophetic oracle which announces the triumph of the Lord over his enemies and the rise of the monarchy in Israel. The prayer is messianic in character and filled with divine reversals. The boaster is humbled. The bows of mighty warriors are shattered. but the feeble grow strong. Those filled with food must hire themselves out for bread, while the hungry are satiated. The barren woman gives birth to 7, but the one with many children, Penina, withers. The Lord who causes the reversals, he is the only Holy One, the rock of the righteous, who rules all things. He kills and brings back to life. He makes the poor rich and the rich poor. He brings low and he lifts up. He raises up the needy, silences the wicked, shatters his enemies, and anoints his king. The song concludes with confident declarations that the Lord will protect the righteous and punish the wicked. He will judge the ends of the earth and establish his Messiah. Hannah's song has entered into Jewish liturgy at several points. According to one opinion, Hannah's song includes allusions to all 18 blessings of the Almeida. On the strength of her prophetic oracle, the Talmud numbers Hannah among the 7 prophetesses of Israel. Who are the 7 prophetesses? Sarah, Miriam, Deborah, Hannah, Abigail, Huldah, and Esther. See, there were prophetesses back then. Prophetess can mean either preacher or seeing the future. Jewish tradition considers Hannah's song one of the 10 great prophetic songs. Various commentaries apply the words of Hannah's song to different events in the history of Israel. The Targum paraphrases the song into a series of prophecies regarding the future miracles, victories, and salvations that the Lord was to perform for Israel. The sages detect allusions to Samuel, the war with the Philistines, the rise of Saul and David, the Assyrian incursions, the Babylonian exile, the Hasmonean rebellion, and so forth. One line of interpretation imagines that in the midst of the prayer, Hannah beseeches God to have mercy upon the sons of Korah and his followers. Her husband Elkanah was from the line of Korah. The broad, sweeping themes of Hannah's song prophesy the coming of the Messiah and hint at the apocalypse, the resurrection of the dead, the Messianic age, and the final judgment. On a simpler level, though, Hannah's song celebrates her own personal triumph over her rival Penina. Hannah and Miriam. Hannah's prayer is echoed by Miriam, the mother of the Master. When the angel Gabriel announced the conception of the Messiah, Miriam replied with an oracle of exaltation which borrows themes from Hannah's prayer and at times quotes it verbatim. Like Hannah, she opens her song with the words, "My soul exalts the Lord." Miriam's song underscores the parallels between her story and Hannah's story and reprises the theme of divine reversal. The miraculous conception of Samuel in a barren womb is surpassed by the miracle of a child conceived in a virgin's womb. Both are deliberate acts of the Lord, divine interventions which demonstrate his sovereign interactions in the material world. That interaction will in the future happen on a revealed level and cause the divine reversals that the songs celebrate. The theme of divine reversal is an intrinsic part of the message of the kingdom. Our master teaches that the first will be last and the last will be first. The humbled will be exalted and the exalted will be humbled. The broad prophetic scope of the songs transfers the 2 women's personal experience with God's miraculous power to the national and universal level. The Lord will redeem his people as he promised, and the miraculous conceptions are tokens of his saving power, like pledges of that future redemption. Not only did the Almighty lift up and exalt barren Hannah and virgin Miriam, he will do so for all the lowly who trust him, and he will do so for the nation. The exalted horn. My heart exalts in the Lord. My horn is exalted in the Lord. My mouth speaks boldly against my enemies because I rejoice in your salvation. 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 1.